Okay, so next up is Cappi Pidwell, and Cappi somebody I actually met through, surprise, surprise, Diana Willard, and I met her at the Inside Edge, which is something that Diana founded a while back ago. It was interesting because, believe it or not, the speaker that I was supposed to hear that day wasn't even Cappi. It was somebody else, and it was terrible. I think the person's home burned to the ground, right?
Yes.
Colorado?
Yes.
The Colorado fire, it was earlier this year. So the person that was supposed to come and speak, their home was burnt to the ground.
Oh, wow.
And so they called him Cappi. He's just known as a great speaker and an expert in NLP and mindset. And so they brought in Cappi to speak to us. So isn't it interesting how I was never supposed to meet Cappi? But unfortunately, someone's home burned down. and now here she is. We ran into each other at the California Women's Conference again, and we connected, and then came up here to one of our Icon Summits and came down to one of our events. And so, as I've just learned more about her, I thought she's somebody great to come and just share a little bit of information with us. And so without further ado, let's have Cappi.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
What a fabulous day. Oh, yeah. I mean, just being in a room full of thought leaders is just like such a gift for all of us. So thank you, David. I appreciate being here. I certainly appreciate connecting with all of you. And absolutely appreciate being able to speak and share at the Inside Edge. How many of you have ever been to the Inside Edge in Newport? Diana has a fabulous group of very evolved people there. I was just sharing with her in the kitchen. I speak all over like many of you. And I don't know about you guys, but do you often go into groups and find that the audience may not be quite as evolved or quite as interested in what you might have to say? And I went to speak at the Inside Edge, and there was all these people in there that were like wise and educated, and they've been talking this talk and walking this walk for many, many years. And I walked in there and I was like, wow, I'm like a baby in here. This is super cool. So I really enjoyed it, and I sat right next to her, and I didn't know who she was, and David was sitting next to her on the other side. So I'm sitting next to her, and I'm looking at her, and they were, doing their meeting thing, and then they got done, and they introduced me or what have you, and I tapped on her, and I said, I just have to tell you, you are absolutely beautiful. Like, I just kept staring at her. She's so beautiful. Yeah. So great. And so then her and David started talking, and I thought David was her son. So I'm like, oh, okay. So I wish. And then we got all done in the meeting, and they were like, oh, Diana, thank you so much. And she owns this and David's this. And I was like, oh, no coincidence, right? So it's just really a pleasure to be here, and we never know who we're going to end up sitting next to or connecting with. So I'm just happy to be here, and I see some familiar faces and see some new faces. So I want to take just a minute and introduce myself to all of you. I guess we all have our titles, if you will, right? We all have our expertise, we all have our values. But really, my story kind of started about 20 years ago when I was in corporate sales. I sold payroll. I did a very analytical, anal job that I absolutely hated, and I made a ton of money. And I got married to an engineer, and was very, very unhappy. It looked really great from the outside. I had the house on the hill and really nice cars and a great looking husband, and emotionally and spiritually and at every other level, I was absolutely miserable. And I got lockjaw. So as you guys know, our body will often show us symptoms if emotionally we're out of whack, right? So I knew nothing about spirituality. I knew nothing about personal growth. I was all anal left-brain driven, right? Very practical and tactical and in sales. And it was the old Tony Hopkins, how to beat the competition training. How many of you guys went through that? I don't know. I did the corporate thing. So I was miserable, though. I absolutely hated it. So I got lockjaw, and I went in, I was a real estate agent, and after I sold payroll taxes, and I went into the office one day, and my jaw was like killing me, and I was talking to this lady like this, right? Has anybody ever had lockjaw, by the way? Okay, if you haven't, I'm sure you've had stress, yes? I've had stress. So I get this lockjaw in my jaw, and I go to the doctor, and they want to break my jaw and build me a mouthpiece, and they tell me I have to wear this mouthpiece for 6 months. So I'm talking to this lady, and my mouth is literally locked shut for 5 days, by the way, in miserable pain. And somebody suggested that I go try hypnosis. Now, this was 20 years ago, okay? So back then, hypnosis wasn't the cool law of attraction, the secret thing like it is today, except if you were in Diana's world, right? Most of us didn't live in that realm. Would you guys agree? I mean, I wasn't exposed to this information like my daughter is. Actually, my daughter is, she always gets embarrassed when I share this, but I did hypnobirthing with Alexa and had her in 20 minutes. Oh, it's so cool. I had her in 20 minutes, which is fascinating. So, anyway, so I went to go see a hypnotist, and I was extremely skeptical at the time because, again, I didn't know anything about it. All I saw was the stage stuff and people, you know, doing silly things with brooms and all that. So I opened the phone book, right? The internet wasn't even around. I opened the phone book, and I'm like, okay, you know, hypnotist, and there was like one. And so I went and saw her, and I went in her office very much like this. I was extremely skeptical. But I had this lockjaw thing that I was like, didn't want to have surgery for, so I'm like, I'll go try something I know absolutely nothing about, like this, but if I get the result, I really don't care what it is, right? So she sits me in her chair and she's like, close your eyes, and I'm like, really? I was so skeptical. So anyway, long story short, as we get done, she says, open your eyes. My eyes pop open, she says, open your mouth. And my mouth, I'll never forget the feeling, it like clicked and crunched and opened up. And I was like, no flipping way. Like, this is so cool. Like, the experience, right, was so powerful for me that I was driving home that night and I pulled over on the side of the road and I bursted into tears. And I was like, what just happened? Like, I can't even explain the experience, but it was life-changing for me. And as I was sitting at the side of the road crying, this big white owl landed right in front of me. And I was like, okay, there's something really cool happening here. And I don't know what it is, but I'm digging this. Like, I finally felt like I was in my own world, right? So the next day I called her up and I said, I do not know what in the heck, but I didn't say heck, my daughter's here. I don't know what the heck you did, but I want more. So I started going back and I started seeing her every week. And I'd walk in her office and I'd say, hey, hi, okay, do me. Like, I want to care for, just do your magic. This is so cool. So I'd sit in her magic chair, that's what I called it. And I'd close my eyes and she'd just start doing all this cool stuff. And I was like, this is so super cool. So as a result, my sales started to increase. All these people started getting attracted to me, going, Cappi, what are you doing? And I'm like, this proactive visualization. Like, I didn't even want to say hypnosis because it was like, right? So my broker calls me in one day and he goes, Cappi, what the hell are you doing? Your numbers have like quadrupled, your sales are off the chart. And I said, dude, I'm seeing a hypnotist. And he's like, okay, don't tell me anymore. Just go to the hypnotist. So the word kind of got out, right? So like literally within 6 months, my business just started soaring. So I started going, you know, I hate driving people around in this car. Kids that spill their drinks, and they call me 7 o'clock at night, and I got, you know, my baby in a high chair over there, and I'm not happily married, but boy, sure did look good from the outside, right? And so I really just started tuning in, and I really started understanding that my thoughts, it's not about our thoughts, my thoughts and my feelings were completely incongruent. And I felt so tied up into a life that was so unfulfilling, but looked very fulfilling. I don't know how many of you can relate to that, but that was my experience. And so I started, the more I started going to her, she made me little tapes, the more my life started to evolve. And so very soon after that, my marriage dissolved. I was married for 14 years, and I have 2 beautiful daughters. That's my younger daughter. And so I became a single mother very, very quickly. My husband was an engineer and thought I was in the room hypnotizing myself and turning into some kooky, quacky person. But he was very linear, very analytical. So anyway, we parted ways, and I ended up raising my 2 daughters. So for any of you that are parents or even single parents, to really pursue my passion back then and be an entrepreneur and be a leader to my 2 children, my experience of being an entrepreneur, there wasn't coaches around. There weren't really people or access to people like we're all entrepreneurs today. There wasn't a lot of people out there teaching strategies and all the stuff we're learning today, especially with the internet and all the stuff that is going on in that whole world. So I started going out to real estate estate offices and I made little cassette tapes and I started banging on a lot of doors. And I started teaching people subconscious solutions and teaching them about their mind. And not just about their thoughts, but how their unconscious mind works. So we often hear things like, oh, I help people break through, beliefs, and I do hypnosis, and I do NLP. And when people ask me what I do, my nickname is Ms. Mindset, because I use many different modalities. But the bottom line is this. I'm going to share with you the model I created over the years on what really drives our behaviors. Because it's not just about information. We're all informationpreneurs. Would you agree? We all have tremendous value. But here's what I know in doing. I've helped thousands and thousands of people over the years. And I've been extremely blessed in my own life to work with some really incredible people and help people produce rapid change. And what I know is, okay, let's use this metaphor. Let's say there's a trash can in front of me. We use that as a metaphor of our mind, okay? And over the years, stuff gets put in it, right? More trash, more information, some trash, some great stuff, right? Some really rich stuff gets put in there. And then over the years, it kind of gets full. Would you agree? We have a lot of data in there, right? And what occurs is, let's say we had an experience 10, 20, 30 years ago, or 5, whatever, and that experience wasn't so positive. You experienced something that wasn't great. Have we all had those experiences? Okay. So what the mind does, the eyes work just like a camera, and it records that event, and it gets stored in our unconscious mind, just like an old tape or a picture or an experience, right? So what occurs is, going back to this trash can, is somebody will have an old past memory, and they try to pack more information on top of it in order to produce results. But they don't really of what's stored in their subconscious mind. And I tell people know more about their computers than they do their own mind. And it fascinates me. So again, I'm speaking to a very involved group of people, and I'm probably not telling you anything you don't know. I'm just going to share with you my version of the model of the mind, because I've had a lot of people come to me and go, Cappi, I've heard this information, but I've never thought of it that way. So I want to show it to you visually, because it really helps people understand how we operate and what drives our behaviors. So if you look at this circle, you guys have probably all heard the statistics that 5 to 10% of our mind is our conscious logical mind, right? Does anybody know how many words a minute your conscious logical mind speaks to you? 500. 500 words a minute. So as I'm talking to you, you're talking to yourself. Right? So no, I like her hair, or wow, she's kind of short, or whatever you're saying, right?
I definitely thought I liked her hair.
Well, so when we understand that self-talk, your internal dialogue, doesn't stop even when you're sleeping, right? So 500 words, that's just words, okay? So if this conscious, logical, practical mind is speaking to us internally at 500 words a minute, and most people are trying to create change on a conscious, practical level, they're dealing with their logic. Would you all agree with that? So they say, okay, logically speaking, do A, B, and C, and you'll get this result, okay? And most people are focused on what?
Results.
The results, right? Here's how I work with people. The other 90% of your mind is your subconscious, okay? So from the ages of 0 to 3, meaning in the womb to 3 years old, 50% of your subconscious belief is set in place by the time we're 3. So when people have babies, like when I had Alexa and I did hypnobirthing, I was very conscious of the data and input I put in her subconscious. So I made her tapes, and my older daughter, every night that they would fall asleep to. And it's actually the best to have the mother's voice, because they were conditioned in the womb to that vibration and that sound. So all these little circles represent events, experiences, memories, emotions, and just because they're little and they're not conscious and logical, doesn't mean they don't feel. Would you agree with that? You take a baby and scream at it, what would it do? It's going to cry, right? So emotions are what we're all conditioned naturally to feel. As we get older, we start to operate out of the conscious, logical, practical, linear mind to try to achieve those results. And most people really don't get that your conscious, logical, practical mind isn't what's driving your emotions. It's your past. So then from the ages of 4 to 8, it's another 30%. So basically, we're a bunch of big 8-year-olds running around with all these experiences. And you could put little people in here, primarily the people who raised us, our moms and dads, right? All the experiences that we have. So here we have all this data. So from 8 to 18, it's only 15% more. So this is a pretty busy space, wouldn't you agree? Your unconscious mind is very busy. So looking at this model, where do you think your conscious, logical, practical thoughts come from? That's exactly right. It comes from our belief systems, right? So here people are, and people come to me, typically, I primarily work with entrepreneurs to increase their relationship to money. That's my primary conversation and group that I work with. I've done everything you could ever imagine, from stop smoking, to weight reduction, to people being abducted by UFOs. I mean, you name it, I've done it. It's a crack of the things that people come to hypnosis for. But really what I've discovered over the years is the logical, practical mind and the subconscious mind are often very incongruent. What I mean by that is people want something, you can call it anything, I don't care what it is, and logically and practically, they will take those action steps or make those efforts to get the result. Remember I said that earlier? What most people don't do is often identify what their limiting emotions are to things. So this might sound a little weird. It's like some of you are like, huh, what do you mean? So let's say, I speak at a lot of organizations and a lot of companies, and I'll listen to managers, primarily with salespeople, right? And they'll go, well, get out there and do A, B, and C, and da-da-da. And oh, yeah, everybody stand up, woo, right? And I'm sitting there going, okay, wonder what that person's belief system is about that, right? So let's say, this is for instance, that salesperson, they tell that person to go out and make 50 calls. I'm just using this as an example. But that person's belief is, that doesn't work for me. And they go out and they make those calls, what are the results going to be? Nothing's going to happen, right? So when we understand that it's not just about logical, practical information and implementing information, because wouldn't you guys agree? There is a ton of information out there. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah. But people operate based on their emotional warehouse, their belief systems. And when you logically and practically sit and coach a person, I mean, I feel like the word coach is just so overused. I was just having a conversation with that. It's not just about coaching, it's not just about hypnosis, it's not just about NLP. It's about a person's internal experience and the memories that they personally have stored in their own unconscious mind. Because some of the memories I've experienced, I'm the fifth of 6 kids, and my oldest brother died of a massive heart attack about, I don't know, 9 or 10 years ago. And he was at a dinner party, had a ton of people at his house, and he died. And it was just, poof, he was gone. And then a few years ago, my little brother, who was 34, was driving in Las Vegas. At work, middle of the day, 2 street racers hit him doing 108 miles an hour in a truck, and they killed him immediately. So you go through your own experiences, right? I went through mine, and my nephew died right after my brother was killed. I mean, we just have like all this stuff happening in our family. So at an unconscious level, those impact us, right? Now, some people cope and deal with things. I have people come into my office, you guys, and I've had people literally sit in front of me and start crying and tell me about their divorce or something, and I'm like, okay, how long ago did that happen? And they're like, 25 years ago! And I'm like, wow. Like an experience happens, and then people operate, or that becomes their whole life, right? Like I could walk around, oh, my brother died, and people do that, right? It's life. It's what occurs. We're not all here for very long. Right? So what I really help people do is kind of take that trash out, like that stinky thing at the bottom of the trash can that we're all trying to put information on top of to cover up. How do you get to that? And most people have absolutely no idea how to access their own unconscious mind. Right? So that's really what I teach people. How do you go into state? I do self-hypnosis every single day. There's not a day I don't do it. And I've used it for everything. I've had major surgery with no anesthesia, that I've had to sign my life away. The doctors go, if you die, you're signing right here. And I'm like, let's go. Right? Because I know my mind-body connection, and I know whatever I communicate internally is precisely what we'll experience in the external world. And most people, if you could record your own internal voice for a day, you'd be very shocked at the things you say, right? And yet we go to other people, and we might be the best communicators outwardly, but our internal talk, you guys, at up to 500 words a minute, if we could record it, we probably want to recondition that. And I truly believe that no matter what information that we consciously and logically get, it's all valuable. I am a life learner. I read a ton. I'm a seminar junkie. I mean, who in the room isn't, right? So I never feel like, there's times where I'm sitting and I'm a total student, and somebody was saying it earlier, they're an observer. I am totally an observer. I sit in the background very, very quietly. I love to watch human behavior. It's so predictable, and it's so enjoyable. I love people. I do. I love to watch it. But anyway, consciously and logically, people, I see people trying to take all these actions and do all these things, but if they don't understand at an unconscious level that their own relationship to whatever the issue is they're trying to break through is a negative one, and their own internal pictures and self-talk is in opposition of what they want, they'll have a very hard time accomplishing that thing. Does that make sense? Yeah. So the real key is, how do I get into the subconscious mind? So many of you in this room probably know how to do that, right? How many? Show me by a show of hands. Okay, so many of you know, okay? So I'm just going to share with you my interpretation, because we all have our own interpretation, okay? So the 4 basic states of mind, I'm just doing basics for those of you that are going to come up to me after and explain your version. That's cool. We all have our own interpretation. So it's beta, alpha, theta, delta, right? Okay? So where do you think most people are trying to create the change? What state, for those of you who know? Beta. Beta, right? So when we're in beta, we're fully in our logical, practical, conscious mind. That's how most people try to create change, okay? When anytime we go into the alpha, theta, or delta state, we're accessing the subconscious mind, right? So when we're in alpha, we are in alpha about 60, I don't know if any of you want to correct my information, feel free, 60 to 80% of the time in the day. You're an alpha when you drive, you're an alpha when you read, you're an alpha after you eat. It's a very, very highly suggestible state, okay? So if I asked you guys to sing that song, Welcome to the Hotel California, could you sing it? Yes. Don't sing. No. But where are those words? How do you know the words? Did you go home and study and read them? No. Repetition. Exactly, repetition. And how many times do you think you had to hear that song before you learned the words? Anybody know?
Well, we sing it like 20 times in the song. So.
Well, take any song, right? The average time you need to hear a song to remember most 50% of the words is 7. That's how powerful the unconscious is. But see, we don't know what's going into our unconscious mind, most people. Most people don't understand state change. I'm very, very careful what goes into my subconscious mind. When I started learning this work, I haven't watched the news in 20 years, and most of you probably don't either. But I really think of this as the richest thing in the world. I love my subconscious mind so much, because it will always produce precisely what I put into it. And what was in it was extremely negative for me growing up. Very, very negative. I had a very dysfunctional childhood. So I learned how to reprogram, recreate those pictures that this little video camera stored as memories. So how do we get into the unconscious mind and change the internal pictures? See, most people, when they come in and they go, I meditate every day or I do yoga, I'm like, that's cool. That's kind of how I started out too. But here's the reality. You've got to change the internal pictures. We all have an automatic remote control right here, right? And when we learn how to use that, we start to change and distort and diminish those internal experiences, that's when we get the stinky trash out, and then we can put more information in. Does that make sense? Yeah. So I started creating systems over the year that deal with the conscious, logical, practical mind to educate people first, and then have them go into the subconscious mind. So it's kind of a dual dynamic. You've got to address the conscious, logical, practical mind, or people will be like I was at first and go, ah, right? So to release that resistance for people when I speak and when I do hypnosis seminars and events and stuff like that, it's always critical that I consciously and logically and practically have people go, I get it. So people come to me and they go, well, have you ever not been able to hypnotize somebody? And I'm like, well, do you watch TV? Do you go to sleep at night? You're getting hypnotized all the time. All the time. But what is it that you're putting in here, right? So if you think of your mind as a bank, every single day you are depositing data into this thing. Every day. And when you go to bed at night, that's my favorite time to start really depositing positive pictures, emotions, and beliefs. It's not just about your thinking. Because let's face it, how many books are out there on positive thinking, you guys? Why doesn't it work? Why don't we all go read How to Think Positive and Get Rich Quick and then whistle away and go, woohoo, that did it, now I'm like the positive Pollyanna. It doesn't work, I don't think, because most people can't consciously and logically stick to that repetition. Does that make sense? But when you start dealing with the subconscious mind and you start going into alpha, theta, and delta, I tell people all the time, I kind of have this funny reputation. I have a program called Mental Money Mastery, and I'll go and do an event, people are like, oh my God, I sleep with you every night. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in your head, not in your bed, okay? So it's very important to get what is going in your head. I'm serious. What is... I'm serious, because they really do. It's kind of a joke.
I'll give you credit.
Oh, thank you. But really, so those rich thoughts and those pictures, and most of us are going to bed thinking about what? Our day, the next day, what we have to accomplish. And the mind is so busy being busy that we're not programming it. So we get information and we go, okay, I'm going to go home and do that. But I'm telling you, if you use subconscious products, and some of you probably already do, I always tell people, identify your core beliefs first. So how I work with a person is they'll say, Cappi, I want to accomplish X. And I'll say, well, tell me what you believe about it. Tell me what picture you see. What do you see when you talk about that belief? I really help them identify what's inside of them, because I guarantee you what's inside of you is different from what's inside of you. But you know what I mean? We go through the whole group. We all have completely different interpretations internally, and that's precisely what we align with externally, right? So most people are talking about change, and guess what they're talking about how to produce it with? The conscious, logical, and practical mind. So it's much quicker when you can go into the alpha, theta, delta states, start to create new experiences internally, right? Here's these new programs, new conditions, new pictures. Guess what starts to feed your conscious thoughts? Yeah? So what's so cool about it is when I work with a person, and a lot of times when I do my own events, I'll bring someone to the front of the room, and I can change an experience that they've had from the past in a matter of 5 minutes. It's gone. They have absolutely no emotional energy on it anymore. What do you think that person will behave out of if they start or stop believing that they're not good enough? It's priceless. Because we all have these subconscious feelings, worthiness, deservability, all this stuff that drives our behavior. We don't walk up to people and go, "Hi, my name's Cappi, and I don't think I'm good enough." We do everything but that, right? Trying to prove ourselves. I was talking to somebody earlier, and I said, many years ago when I was really driven to succeed, I was all about that, right? I had to make so much money, and I had my goals, and I had the car I wanted, all the pictures and the vision boards, and I did all that. I had it all. I had a very, very successful business. I've traveled all over the nation, and I've been very, very blessed to educate a lot of people on this information. And then the real estate market changed. I owned a lot of properties. I spoke to real estate agents. That was my primary market. Guess who stopped buying systems and solutions? Real estate agents. So I ended up letting go of a lot of employees, like many of you. My life changed dramatically. Has anybody else been through that transition ever in their life? And I got to tell you, there were times that it was very, very scary. And I truly believe that if I didn't do what I do for a living, I don't know how I would have coped through that. And I sat literally through that experience and thought, where is my wealth? It's really in my knowledge. It has nothing to do with the car I drive and the home I live in. And as long as my children are healthy and I can master this in the worst of circumstances, I can do anything. And I had a lot of people around me, like my mother and other people, Cappi, you better get a job, or you better do this, or find a solution, right? And I'm like, here's the solution right here. And I created and really birthed my Mental Money Mastery out of losing hundreds of thousands of dollars and going through a lot of trauma, realizing that my wealth was really within, and that's really what I taught people. So how do we enrich that relationship versus going for the goals and getting the stuff? So I know many of you in the room can probably relate because you've done all that, you've been there. So I really do say, there's an inner game and there's an outer game. And I think 95% of the population is still focused on the outer. We need both. And the inner is often ignored. And it's often logicalized. Like read this book or, work with me for 2 years and, spend $50,000. And I'm like, hi, come and see me for an hour. I'm serious. When you understand how your mind operates and how you can delete distort information and replace it with new pictures and patterns and beliefs and feelings that you want consciously and logically today, you can produce incredible massive results in your life. So I just wanted to share my model and my information because I feel very blessed to help a lot of people with this stuff. I've helped many people go from a little money to a ton of money. I've helped people with phobias and fears and again, you name it, I've done it, and it really is a privilege to just contribute to everybody's journey. So if anybody has any questions or anything you want to chat with me afterward, I'd love to empower people and share my solutions. And really what I need, let me just finish up, really what I need is I need help with some of the outer game stuff. I'm a master at what I do. I've got great products, great solutions, great systems, and I suck at online stuff. So hence meeting data. So thank you very much.